These symbols derive themselves from practically every tradition of the world. We do not like to believe that perhaps there is a whole world of things beyond our sensory perception, or outside of our ability to understand. He had to penetrate layer after layer of interpretation.
Force an extraordinary illusion in which the sensory information of the present is cancelled by immense knowledge derived from the past.
Imagine prisoners that have spent their entire lives chained deep inside a cave. They have been chained so that they cannot see behind themselves, and they are forced to stare endlessly at the cave wall in front of them. Behind them, a fire is burning, and between the prisoners and the fire is a raised walkway. Now imagine that each day, a menagerie of objects crosses the walkway. Animals, and people carrying their wares to market. Their shapes create an intricate shadow play on the wall in front of the prisoners. This is the only world that the prisoners have ever known. The shadows and the echoes of unseen objects. Now, imagine that a prisoner is released. After some time adjusting to the blinding light, the freed prisoner will begin to experience the world outside of the cave for the very first time. And it is like nothing he could have ever imagined. With his new perception of the world, the man will of course want to return to his friends to share his incredible discoveries. But the prisoners cannot recognize their old friend. He appears as all things do. His voice is a distorted echo, and his body is a grotesque shadow. They cannot understand his fantastic stories of the world outside of the cave. To them, it will never exist. This, of course, does not make the world outside of the cave any less real.
Some of us have either heard or asked the same two questions over the years.
Why would they lie about the shape and structure of the Earth? Why is it even important to us?
Let us first consider what's being exploited and compare it to what we've been led on to believe. The main culprits can be narrowed down to governments and corporations. And all governments are in fact corporations. Same corporations that continue to tell us
resources are limited, but space is infinite.
they have controlled and mandated every aspect of science, education, research, and media, infiltrating every cultural paradigm and social trend to further manipulate and twist the unwitting minds of the masses. There are no limits to the length they will go to protect the brittle foundation of dominance supported only by deception and lies. Knowledge is power, and slavery begins where knowledge is withheld. Therefore, the truth about our physical reality is critical. And the only alternative has been conveniently waiting for us all along.
The Earth is flat. Why do you say that?
We live on a flat plane.
It's flat. Seeing is believing, as these globes clearly illustrate the Earth is round. Or is it?
It's flatter than a pancake.
They insist the Earth is, well, flat.
Is this where we find truth? Even our school system has influenced the interpretations that allege
The ancient world believed the earth to be flat.
many of us have been forced to keep digging. And a few of us come to recognize what the globe had been showing all along.
This is the hollow head. Actually, at the moment, it's a perfectly normal head of Charlie Chaplin, but wait, as it comes round, you'll see, or will you, that it's hollow. The back of it, coming round now, is actually a hollow mask. It appears to rotate in the opposite direction, and amazingly, the nose sticks out, although it's actually sticking in. Coming round now is the normal, correct as it were, face, and wait again as it comes round, and you'll see this extraordinary thing like Jekyll and Hyde. Both the noses stick out because it's so unlikely that a nose sticks in that a face is hollow. So you see it as convex, although it's in fact concave, as now, and then it'll become the normal face again, there. And note that as soon as the features appear in the hollow inside, it will look convex, as though it's a normal face almost, though it isn't. As soon as the features appear, there, your brain refuses to see it as hollow simply because it is so unlikely. And this demonstrates the immense power of top-down knowledge, which can actually counter signals bottom up from the senses and fourth, an extraordinary illusion in which the sensory information of the present is cancelled by immense knowledge derived from the past, because you've seen so many faces, all with their noses sticking out. So it's just impossible to see that as correctly hollow. This demonstrates the immense power of top-down knowledge, which could actually counter signals bottom-up from the senses, and fourth, an extraordinary illusion in which the sensory information of the present is cancelled by immense knowledge derived from the past. So it's just impossible to see that as correctly hollow.
There are hundreds of antique maps of practically all nationalities made with this specific projection. We would expect to find a lot of information on it, but Wikipedia leads to dead end after dead end. Some of the most significant videos and articles relating to concave Earth tend to disappear. Longitude is a geographic coordinate based off of angular measurements that specify the east-west position of any point on Earth. Modern projections illustrate longitudinal divergence towards the center, while the maps of antiquity illustrate the opposite. This is one reason we observe different sized continents on different projections. These are more than old maps. They are works of art. The scale around the circumference of these maps have always reminded me of some sort of seal. Is it only coincidental that we find the same scale or seal on illustrations of the depicted celestial sphere? We also find them around the Copernican model. And constellations always tend to have a relation to the Earth. Before we can confirm any truth, we must first oppose it. My personal attempts to disprove concave Earth have only led to a never-ending series of overwhelming odds. We will barely scratch the surface in this first episode.
They actually have to nose up. They fly 0 degrees. They actually have to nose up. They fly.
So it can only pick up the ground clutter if the radar is angled low, and it's not being bent. These beams are not being bent. And what do I mean by they're not being bent? Well, this is the explanation from an expert of why you can pick up ground clutter or blooms. When the sun goes down and the surface begins to cool, the change in refractive index in the lowest few several hundred feet of the atmosphere tend to bend the radar beam toward the surface. This bending holds the radar beam near the surface for extended distances where it encounters scatters that would not normally be available above the boundary layer. These scatters include insects, bats, aerosols, can I say that again? Aerosols, particulate matter, etc., and account for the increased radar return, referred to as radar bloom. And now, here's the problem. The problem is that the sun is not setting here in Texas right now. It's been like this all day, by the way, folks. It's midday right now. It's a beautiful day. The atmosphere is not cooling. So, there's no reason why radar, regular Doppler radar, NEXRAD, at its usual angle should be picking this up right now.
0 degrees down. They actually have to nose up.
Alright, this is just a real quick video. Just want to show some biblical evidence for heaven being in the earth. I'm in Job 38, and I'm going to go to verse 33. This is the 1599 Geneva Bible. Knowest thou the course of heaven, or canst thou set the rule thereof in the earth? We've got the 1560 Geneva Bible, Job 38:33. Knowest thou the course of heaven, or canst thou set the rule thereof in earth? Next, we've got a regular 1679 King James, Job 38:33. Knowest thou the ordinances of heaven? Canst thou set the dominion thereof in the earth? Okay. Next, we've got at Sefer, okay, Job 38:33. Know you the ordinances of heaven? Can you set the dominion thereof in the earth? Okay? So I've also got a Greek Septuagint here. Now, when you look up that verse, it's going to say something completely different. I've got the JPS Tanakh. Also, it's going to be worded differently. And I've also got the Interlinear Bible here. It's also going to be worded a little bit differently. In English, it says the heavens are in the earth. Just something to take note of. But for all those people that want to say that Scripture does not say that heaven is in the earth, well, you just got proved wrong.
This black spot right here is where the light has disappeared. It cannot penetrate this spot, nor can it exist here, because this is the point of centripetal convergence, where light is literally sucking down like a drain down a hole. Okay?
There's no inside structure.
Is it hollow?
Yeah, there's only a surface. There's nothing inside.
Is the sun actually, do you believe, combusting in on
It's
itself?
not burning anything. There's no fusion in the sun. That's well understood.
Prove it.
Yeah, well, there's just no way to prove that there is any. It's only in the flares that you get fusion. That's why all the X-rays. The flares, the arcs, and the X-rays, and the microwaves, and whatever result of fusion in the arcs. There's no fusion in the sun. They don't know how the sun works.
Why do you, what's special, how does the sun make light?
It's a transformer. Transforms from some other dimension. It's not burning anything. It doesn't have to. It's a converter.
At the center of every magnet, there is zero magnetism. You can see that underneath the ferrocell. You can see that underneath magnetic viewing film. You could even see it if you were to bring two magnets together with a Gauss meter at the center. So, we know what's going to be at the center. Is it going to be a black spot or a gigantic disk of light? What do you think the answer is? We're creating one magnet out of two. You'll notice as I get it closer, hard to keep it from snapping together, I don't want to break the glass, that at first the black hole gets a little larger. Notice the flux lines diverging. You see that? Now wait, what happens when I bring it together? Look at what's forming before I bring it together. You see that that ring of light? As I get closer, let me get it so you can get a better view. As I get closer, the the black turns into a ring of light. See if I can zoom in so you can see it. Here we go. Hold on a second. There we go. A ring of light. What you're seeing is the center of the magnet. These two magnets are now effectively one, even though they're separated by a couple of thin pieces of precision glass. The center where no magnetism exists, there's a halo of light. The dark lines represent centripetal convergence. The white lines represent centrifugal divergence. So what you're seeing in the white lines is true magnetism. No, they're moving in the exact same direction, only inverse to your spatial perspective. Nothing. Space is the air inside this donut. The cream filling inside the donut of magnetic divergence is literally the farts, the after effect, the remnant remains, the fecal matter of the loss of inertia, which necessitates magnetic divergence and reciprocation. As Faraday called magnetism, he called it the dielectric field. And oddly enough, one of the first experts in electrical engineering was the guy who got closest, even closer than Tesla, to understanding what magnetism was in its relationship to dielectricity, because only dielectricity exists.
Love my flat earth community because they're asking questions and they're, you know, trying to get to the answers, but the truth of it is there is no scientific evidence to break down a flat torus field. There is no such thing. There's no such thing as something being a flat and three-dimensional object at the same time either. Because a lot of them say, well, it's hollow, but it's flat, but it's round, and it's this at the same time. It's absurd. I mean, how much more are you going to try and force things into your model of it being flat? It's not flat. It can't be flat. I'll explain why. When you break down these two pictures here, showing you field theory 101. This little orange, or this greenish looking blue disc right here, I don't know if you can see that. That bluish disc right here, that's flat right there. This is where flat earthers say they live, on the flat part of a torus field. Okay? So what this is right here is this is the centripetal dielectric movement and zone right here. Centripetal dielectric movement and zone. Centripetal means in, so everything is converging inward, and that breaks it down right here. This is your dielectric plate right here. This greenish, bluish looking flat plate right here is this yellow right here. This is what you're seeing right here. So everything is centripetal. It's converging in on the center point. It's converging in on the center point. On the center point. On the center. Center. Center is the point of creation. Center. So everything's converging in at this center point, which is the dielectric field. It's destroying space, meaning, and this is where they say they live. So everything is sucking in. You can take your idea of a black hole, and this is exactly what you would get. You understand? So what this is, where they say they live, is in a chaotic state of a black hole, of nothingness. Nothing exists here. This is formless energy before it's cast out and expressed through magnetism.
He's not finding a truth. He's losing an illusion. The depictions of the Flammarion engraving state as followed. A medieval missionary says he has found the point where heaven and earth meet. The message couldn't be clearer. The dome is a facade, an illusion of the mind.
We do not like to believe that perhaps there is a whole world of things beyond our sensory perception, or outside of our ability to understand.
I've heard the argument, and I did abide by it myself for a few years. Water always seeks its own level, right? There were several significant properties I completely ignored. Compression, electricity, magnetism, resonance, memory, and more. We'll delve into some of these and further on the next episode of The Cave. Thanks for joining me.